All right, there we go. All right, good evening, everybody. We are Facebook Live. Okay, this jumped back. What happened here? Oh, there it is. All right, we are Facebook Live. I see people are getting on. Good evening. We're going to give them a few minutes, Dr. Anitra, to get on. Good evening, everybody. I see you joining. I see you joining. I'm so glad to have you with us this evening. We have a treat for you. So, you know what to do. Say hello to each other for all who are joining us this evening. Say hi, share this live, tell your family, your friends if they have children, if they are caretakers, if they have nieces, nephews, grandchildren. We're going to talk about some things that are specifically for them today. Hey guys, hey. So please make sure you let them know, say, hey, jump on here. I have an expert today who's going to give us some things, some cues that we need to be aware of, some things we need to pay attention to. Thank you, team. I got to go ahead. You hear me loud and clear, and you see me loud. Thank you so much. So make sure y'all share, 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 share. Thank you very much, team. I got your response. So I'm glad to see y'all this evening. This is the last part of the mental health conversations as it pertains to COVID-19 or coronavirus, pandemic, whatever you want to call it today. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have Dr. Anitra all the way from Texas, y'all. But this lady told me she's from Mississippi. So we were having conversations before y'all got on about how she's that multifaceted woman. Now, don't let the cuteness fool you. So she looks like a city girl, but she has a little country to her. So she was telling me that she knows how to rip, how to what do you call it, rope a steer,
Rope a horse and ride a steer.
ride
Yes, ma'am.
a
I,
steer. Rope
yes.
a horse. I done messed it all up. See, that's that city in me. I done messed it all up. I said, oh my God. So I love people who are just multifaceted, have different dynamics to them, multidimensional. So I look forward to having this conversation. Bishop, thank you for joining us today. Let's get a few more people. I want you guys to continue to share this information. Do me a favor. Sometimes you get them quicker when you put their names in the comments and just say, you need to get on here. If they have children and they've been home with these kids since March, they need to be on this live because I know that we're going to talk about some things that concern them or some things they need to be paying attention to. I don't have little bitty children anymore, but I do have nephews. And so I've been paying attention to the way they've been dealing with COVID-19 and some of their apprehensions and anxieties. Not many people believe that kids have anxieties, but they have anxieties just like we do. And so we have to teach them how to deal with those anxieties so that they can be whole and they can be healthy. Because if you don't, if you have children with anxiety, they grow up to be adults with anxieties. So we want to address that. There's some good data we're going to share with you tonight, and also some information from Dr. Anitra, who is a psychologist. I think she has over 20 years in this field. I read quite a bit about you, and I was like, this woman is doing a little bit of everything. So I am so honored. So for those of you who are joining me for the first time, I am Dr. Diane Lazare. My history, I have quite a few educational degrees as well. But what I started out in my history in social science, I did counseling for about 20 years, and I've shifted from that. I'm an entrepreneur and a whole lot of other stuff. But mental health is very, very, very prevalent to me. It's important to me. It's a part of who I am. And so it interests me. And with the whole dynamics of the pandemic and everything that is going on in the world, I've been thinking about the mental health of people. So if you've been on the lives with me before, we've talked about family dynamics in week one and domestic violence and how it has increased as a result of the pandemic. In week two, we talked about individual anxiety and how you can identify when it's not normal, some of the things that you are dealing with. We all have anxiety, okay? We all have fears, but there's a line that we will cross that lets us know that it's something more severe. So today I want to talk about children. I've been watching the news. I've been seeing some good things and some bad things, and I'm concerned about our kids because if we are adults and we have anxiety and fears and not understanding how this virus is going to end or what's going to be the end of it. I'm sure children are concerned. Their routines are disrupted. Things that they know to be sure are unsure to them. And children don't process things the way we do. So I want to encourage you to look at things from a child's perspective today and consider, because they are our future. So if we don't take the time to invest in them right now, we're just basically leaving it up to life or whatever happens to that they will adjust or not adjust, and it will affect them futuristically, which means it's going to affect our futures. If you know teachers, tag them now, because the students that are going to show up in your classroom in August, if you all go back to school in August, are not going to be the same children that left your class in March. This pandemic is shifting everybody's mindset. It's shifting everybody's thought process, how they think about themselves and the world. So we want to be able to know how to relate to them properly. So with that, I am joined by the one and only Dr. Anitra Quinn. I met her probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I think. And I loved her spirit. She probably don't even remember this, but she and her husband worshiped so in church. I was like, that's what's up. That's what I'm talking about. So I had the privilege of meeting her. We have some some friends who are in common. And so I had the privilege of meeting and talking to her. And I love good people. I love smart people. And so I just knew I had to take advantage of this and see if I can get her on this line to share some of this expertise. So with that, we're going to get started. Her information is going to be in the comments. Now, I just told you she's a psychologist all these years. She's an author. She's a mom. She's a wife. She's a minister of the gospel. So she has quite a few things under her plate. I mean, too much for me to list today. So her information is in the comment. Please check her out. Check her out and just see what she's about. And she's still practicing now. So if you want to connect with her for yourself or your kids, please reach out to her. She will respond. So just do that, because we're not doing this just because we don't have anything to do. This is about being a resolution, being able to bring some resolve to a problem. So with that, I am ready to get started. Y'all see this beautiful woman, right? So we're going to start with this. This is how I usually like to start. Oh, I forgot to say this. If you guys have questions, comments, things you want Dr. Anitra to respond to, please put it in the comments. I have a team who's monitoring your comments. They're going to vet those questions and get those to me. I will get them to Dr. Anitra, so that she can answer them while we're on the live. So we're going to try to answer the stuff that is probably relative to everybody. So if it's extreme, we probably won't get to it. But if it affects majority, because we're trying to get as much information out as possible. So greetings again to everybody. I love you guys. Thank you for joining. Please continue to share while we're doing this live. Bring those questions, comments, statements, so that we all can be on the same page. So here we go. Dr. Anitra, I did some research. And one of the things I found out, I don't know a lot about children and anxiety. I know some because I did work in schools for the majority of my tenure when I did social science and counseling and things like that. I was assigned to school systems. And I did vary from elementary age all the way through high school. And then I was an adjunct professor at Florida A&M University. So I've been around kids, but not to the degree. This is not my area of expertise. But I was disturbed to find that 1 out of every 7 children has some mental health concerns, many of them which are not diagnosed. Now, back in my day, I knew that they had problems with diagnosing some of the kids because, they said, well, it doesn't manifest until when they're older. Well, we've since found that that's not true. So it was concerning to me. So the more I researched, I realized that health professionals are saying they really don't know the effects that COVID or pandemic will have in the lives of children until later. But they do see some of the symptoms of anxiety and fear and depression now.
Right.
So I was like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine. I have 2 boys, by the way. They are 28 and 25, but I couldn't imagine me having to explain over and over this process to my little kids, why you have to wear a mask, why you can't touch, why the things that kids do, having to explain this life shift, why you aren't going to school anymore, you know, and all of these, and why people you might be related to or people you know are dying and they weren't sick before this. All of those things really concerned me, because if it bothers us as adults, I'm sure it bothers children. It's just the hard part is trying to figure out where they draw the line. They can't always communicate how they feel. So I wanted to start there. As a psychologist, what are some of the mental health concerns that you see in children as it pertains to the pandemic?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you for that raving introduction. I do appreciate that. You are so super awesome. You know that I think the world of you. You know, one of the things that we have to know is that just like us, kids, they're processing this information, but unlike us, they've only been in the world for a limited amount of time. So they are looking through a child's scope. And when you think about that and the experience, I myself have two children that are young. Caleb is 6, Noah is 8. And yes, I have gotten the questions from them and I had to sit down and talk to them. And so when you ask the question, what have I seen? I've been in the field of school psychology. That is my area of expertise, and child psychopathology, crisis intervention, suicide prevention. And when I look at what I've seen, it goes across the gamut. Kids are not so different from adults. I have had children be suicidal as young as kindergarten, okay? And I've had children who have experienced significant anxiety, depression, even kids that have had from post-trauma, just significant challenges. So when we start to look at that and conceptualize the fact that kids have real mental health challenges, which is why, as a school psychologist, we do provide school-based services for mental health. And so what that looks like is just like an adult would go into an office and sit down and get their counseling session. It's the same thing with kids. But the difference is that we make it age appropriate. And so when it comes to talking to kids about COVID, it's the same thing, making it age appropriate.
Wow. So I totally agree, because I worked as a school psychologist. We were a part of the what we would call a team. So we'd have a psychologist, a social worker, and so forth. So I know that it is important. I think now trying to get the rest of the world to recognize that this is really important, parents, so that they can identify and know that some of these behaviors are not typical, because I know they hope they want it to, you know, just, well, maybe it'll pass. So I was reading some notes from CNN, and one of the things I came across was the reporter asked a parent, are you experiencing any difficulties with your children? And she says, one thing happens with my 5-year-old. Every time the doorbell rings, he runs and hides. And that really hurt me, because I'm like, oh my God, this baby doesn't know if COVID is knocking on the door or somebody's sick and bringing COVID in the house. And so it just shook me to know that this is his response. And so with that, I said, I know we have to get to the bottom. So I do want to talk about some things that parents could do, and teachers and so forth. And then we're going to get into being able to identify when children might be experiencing anxiety or depression or fear. So some stuff that I read, you can yes or no, or tell me what you thought, because this is just based on research that I did. So
if I can just, I want to piggyback on something that you said, because I actually had that exact same experience with my son.
Really?
My 8-year-old, the exact experience. And my 8-year-old is one of the things we have to keep in mind is kids have their devices. They have their little phones, their little tablets. And what they do, they're going to research. From my clients I've worked with to my own kids, they're going to research. They're going to find the answers. Even when adults have given them the answer, they're going to verify, because they're kids and they're curious and they want to know. So we had someone come to cut our lawn, and the gentleman was out, he was outside, and he started to He wasn't even really walking towards the door. He was cutting the grass up a little bit closer. Noah ran into the pantry, into the closet, the pantry door, closed himself in, and he said, I don't want to get COVID. Oh. And so I recognized that we had to have a more in-depth conversation beyond what I talked to him about previously and what his research had rendered, because kids can internalize what they see and hear and then start to display trauma-like behaviors. Okay. And so we have to be ready to have those conversations.
Absolutely. Wow. Poor baby. But some adults are probably running in the pantry too. They just won't admit it. But yeah, and it's scary. I mean, it really is scary. So right. None of us need to pretend that it's not, because it is. I wanted to say one of the biggest predictors to where children will be, because they really don't know, is the way parents respond. That's what I read. Said that's a huge predictor of how children are going to process it, the way their parents or caregivers or whoever they spend the majority of their time with. And I thought that was powerful, because the first thing I wanted us to address was parents. Mm-hmm. And the number one thing they said parents needed to do was self-care. Said they are no good to their children if they don't take care of themselves. Talk to us.
That is profound. And here's why. I want to start with the piece about parents taking care of self, and then I'll go down to the child imitating or emulating parent behavior. So when you get on a plane, right? Everybody, you may have heard this. The first instruction you're given before you try to help the person beside you, help yourself, because you don't want your behavior to be counterproductive, right? But you also want to make sure that you have the ability, the strength, and the wherewithal to be helpful, right? And so making sure we take care of self is number one importance. Now, kids they learn by observation and demonstration. So they're going to look at the parent to see, how do I respond? How do I respond? And what's interesting about that is it's not so much what you say, it's what you do. And so I think one of the biggest things is making sure as a parent that you are demonstrating adequate self-care. That's so important. I think when we miss out on that piece, we give kids a void and they have no idea what to do. Just the other day, my son and I were having a conversation and he was frustrated about something. And I actually had to take the time to explain to him how you manage the frustration that you're feeling. Not that you don't get frustrated about that, or you should stop being angry or whatever. No. I have to teach you how to manage it. Yeah. Kids don't get the book to say, when you're afraid, this is what you do. Or when you hear this on television and you hear about people dying, this is what you do. That doesn't come after the commercial. It doesn't give us a what to do next. So as the parent, we have to be the teacher of what to do when.
I absolutely. I love what you said. Let's add this piece on. Parents have so much right now, Dr. Anitra. They are definitely the first teachers naturally for their children. Now they have the responsibility academically to teach their children. All of these stressors, on top of be the caretaker of whoever else is in the house and make sure financially we're okay. That's a lot for parents. And so I think it's easy for children to pick up their feelings because it's overwhelming. And I don't even know how I would balance all of that if I still had to be on conference calls all day and teach my children academically also, plus cook, clean, all of the things that we do naturally. It is overwhelming. And trying to keep your children balanced so that they don't feel what you feel. It amazes me that we probably haven't had more incidences as it pertains to breakdowns and things of that nature. So the second thing you said I had to sit Noah down. That's the second thing that's on my list. It says, after parents, self-care, take care of yourself, talk to your children. Talk to your children. So I really want to hear your perspective. And you kind of mentioned that about Noah. How important is it for you to talk to your children, but talk to them on a level where they can understand?
Right. That's so super important. As I go into that, I want to kind of segue because you said something else about how we kind of respond and what do you do. So I think it's important that we implement time. We have to literally carve out mom time, mom's calming time. Okay. And that timing needs to be when you're able to get yourself in a place where you're able to be productive for your family and not allow them to kind of be pulled into your emotional down spiral, because we tend to do that, right? Okay, so that's one thing. The other part of your question, when you talk about, wait, repeat that part, because I do want to make sure I don't miss it, because tell me what the second part of it was.
The first part talked about the parent's ability to balance and all the
Okay,
things that they have to deal with. Yeah.
so the balancing piece for me, I had to do all that stuff this summer. Okay, so I was still working, doing assessments, doing the Zoom calls, and managing multiple contracts, and doing homeschool with Noah and Caleb, which was a whole lot because I also do ministry. And so it was a whole lot. And one of the things I found myself telling parents, because I also did some work and I'm still doing with a crisis hotline here in the city, where we are talking to parents who are having some issues as it relates to COVID-19. And just, you can only do what you can do. You can only do what you can do. And sometimes you may have 50 billion things on the agenda, but you have to prioritize what is most important. And so I, as the parent in the parent role, contacted my campus, talked to my principal. I advocated for the rest of the parents. I said, look, here's the thing. People are carrying a lot. And truth be told, from a theoretical perspective, we're not only just taking care of the kids, we're also in crisis, and the kids are in crisis. So the product you're going to get is not going to be one that is substantial anyway. Let me be clear about that. But because you also have the heavy latency of the child being overwhelmed, stressed out, and you have the parent stress as well. So parents should be able to do what they can do, and kids as well, because of the school psychologist. When kids are in crisis, we remove them from the crisis, and then we go back to focusing on the academic portion. Sure. So prioritize, parents. Don't get caught up in having to do so much. The anticipation is that a lot of us will still be doing some homeschooling as we go into the fall. Do what you can do, work with your campuses, but don't put yourself or allow yourself to be put in a box where you are exceedingly overwhelmed. Amen. Because mentally it is not good for you, and it is not good for your child.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think parents, they feel the pressure of having to do it all, but you can't spread yourself too thin, because you won't be any good to anybody. Back to the analogy of the airplane. So you do have to take care of you first and do what you can do. I like that you said that. You said mom calming. What was the term?
Mom calming time. And that's like basically, that. Your MCT, where you pull yourself away. And for me, I will tell you my secret. My husband knows this. I will go and take the longest bath in the history of baths. I will take the longest. I have my music on, and I'm sorry, that time is carved out so that I can be my best for you. Okay. That's the only way. Otherwise, you may see grumpy mom. And I don't want
it's true.
Okay. You may see agitated mom who cannot get her thoughts together, right? Because my mind is going, our minds go a mile a minute, right? So pull yourself away, allow yourself to emotionally detach so that you can regroup. Okay. So you can do things like, we like to call it a mini vacation, a mini mental vacation, where you go and you put you can actually Google these on YouTube. You can Google guided imagery. You can Google mini mental vacations and all of that, just to give you some calming. Doing yoga, exercising, all of that is really, really good. And guess what? My son, it's so funny. They're too funny. Both of them, they watch what I do. And so they're doing it. So when I have to do my push-ups, guess what? They're down there. Okay, mom, we got to do yoga, because they know that you have to take care of your temple first before you can be able to use it to help someone else and divvy out.
I love it. Love it. I don't have any little kids anymore, but I definitely take that calming time. So, hey, so I tell you this. One more point I found, and then we're going to shift a little bit. They said it is very important to keep routines. What do you think about that?
Routines are critical, especially when it comes to bedtime routines for both kids and adults. When I tell you, when I did behavioral pediatrics, one of the biggest challenges was sleep problems. From the teenagers down, it was sleep challenges, whether it was I can't get to sleep, I have insomnia, whether it's I'm sleeping all the time, whether it's I'm having night terrors. So one of the things we like to kind of use as a constant, have a bedtime routine that starts with something that helps to relax your brain and once again detach it from the monotony of the busyness of your day. The brain has to slow down, and there are things that we can do to slow the brain down. Like with my sons, we start listening to calming music, and now even when they're at my parents, they are listening to the YouTube songs that I have them listen to kind of calm down, soft Christian music. So helping to calm them down. It could even also include obviously the hot bath before that, and then the calming music, and then saying the prayers. All of these activities help to condition and guide them into a relaxed state, but it also helps them to plan out. It's not a surprise that by this time I'm going to get tired. So what you'll start to see happening is once you put that routine in place, you'll see your child start to aisle down as the time starts to shift in terms of the time of day. You'll see their behavior start to kind of aisle down because they're prepared, because you kind of train the brain as to what's going to happen. You front loaded the brain. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Actually, I think it would be easier to probably manage some behavior that they probably don't want to experience. But I noticed that a lot of parents don't follow routine when the kids are not in school. So, especially during this time. And I'm just wondering how difficult that must be, because based on what you just said, your brain is already prepared. So if you're not following routine, then the kids probably don't know what's next.
Right. It is very difficult. I will have to say, I even had challenges with the daytime routine. One of my sons is on the autism spectrum, high functioning, but definitely on the spectrum. And so it was challenging because he already had a set routine from what he had been taught in school. And so now bringing it to home, it totally threw Caleb completely off. And so I had to reestablish his routine, because with kids with autism, this is the box of home. The box of home looks like this. This is the box of school. They don't look the same. Okay. So when you try and infuse school into home, it looks very different. Even though I do a lot of teaching, it wasn't the same where he had to sit and listen to an adult on a Zoom meeting going over academics. That's different from me showing him the videos about specific things in science or specific things, and it was kid friendly. Okay. And so I think just parents being able to identify a routine that's going to work and that's going to be productive for both them and the kids was a huge challenge. I heard a lot of parents say that this summer. And so again, with that, what I did, I actually put on my refrigerator, I had like their little schedule thing of what they were going to do, and they would get little X's or whatever, the little check marks, and they got a reward, and they really liked that. It wasn't something that I went out and purchased. I just made my own with a piece of white printing paper and a marker, and it worked for us. But again, it wasn't as strenuous as a school-based routine, because again, we have to keep in mind, we are in a state of crisis, and you may not want to believe it, but kids deal with crisis differently, and it looks differently. So one of the things I found is my older son was having, I wouldn't call them nightmares, but they were close to having nightmares initially. And it wasn't necessarily about COVID, but he didn't typically have them. And then I started seeing, even with my younger son, being a little bit more emotional. And so having difficulty, both of them, with just attending to tasks consistently. You can see that when kids have anxiety. So just a plethora of things you can see. I know you said we would get to that, but there's so many things that as parents you can see and start to make sure when you have that routine that you're implementing breaks for them, that you're implementing time for them to have fun, that you're implementing family time. There's something I like to call grounding. You go outside, you sit on the ground, and you just kind of look around at some of the natural things in our environment that God created in this amazing tapestry. And then you start to kind of just allow yourself to feel, the presence of being there in that space. And so just doing things with your family is so important because it builds the connectedness and it helps to lessen the anxiety because it builds the certainty of knowing that I have support.
You know, out of all the things that you said, I love that you said, do what works for you.
Mhm.
And I think that's where sometimes parents feel like they are missing what to do because it's like, I don't know what to do. And you just really have to evaluate your own situation and decide this works for me, my house, this will be best for my kid. I'm
Mhm.
glad that you brought up autism because I wanted to ask you about that. And I know that there are some kids in our church
Mhm.
who have autism, which has taught us as a ministry how to respect and know how to serve those kids. Because prior to that, we didn't know. And we've learned a lot. And I think parents don't always know, even if their child is, it's a learning experience for them as well as the child gets older and the different spectrums, how far on the scale. So when you mention do what works for you, parents, I have to say that you got to do what works for you and that this is temporary. We just don't know how long.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't know how long this is going to be, but it is temporary. So let's go ahead and get into some of the symptoms because we segue right into that. You talked about being able to identify if your kids are experiencing anxiety, fear, or depression, whether they have a diagnosis already or it is a result of COVID or they have a diagnosis and COVID is added to that.
Exactly.
So, some of the things I did find, and I'm going to allow you to just talk about some of the things that you already know. Some simple things are not that different from when adults have anxiety as with children. The difference I found is that sometimes in kids, they seem so vague until you think it's a normal illness. You think it's something just simple. So I'll just start with a mild headache or a
Mhm.
tummy ache or something
Mhm.
like that. And it just kind of transitions from there to outburst of anger. So I'll let you take it from there. What do you think about that?
Right. Yes. So we do see the headaches and the stomach aches. Those are what we call those psychosomatic symptoms. You know, a child continuing to complain about a head hurting or a tummy hurting, and it's perpetual, and it seems to be interfering with their everyday functioning. You may have a child who's having sleep difficulty, maybe having, again, like I said before, difficulty concentrating and focusing, kind of appearing to be hyperactive. Sometimes hyperactivity is not hyperactivity due to ADHD. It can be hyperactivity due to anxiety. Okay.
Wow.
Because there's stuff going on in the mind and you're constantly moving around because you have nervous energies. Okay. So we see that in kids. I've seen that a lot in kids. You may also, as it relates to anxiety, see a kid that is having a hard time just kind of being comfortable in spaces, going to school or going places, or being afraid of people, like the one child, people coming to the house, being even fearful of, even if the child hears you talking on the phone about someone coming over and you see that, you know, they're asking a lot of questions about that, that may be an indication that the child is nervous. As it relates to depression, you know, that's an interesting one that I am so blessed to have a lot of insight on all of them, but that one is one that my heart goes out because it oftentimes gets overlooked. People think it's just, oh, I know they're not depressed. That's just, they're just going through the motions or through the phase or whatever. But depression is very, very real in kids. And especially when we start talking about all the things we're seeing on the media, as they internalize that, as they internalize people dying and internalize the potential for them to die, it could create both anxiety and depression. And so you may see a child who starts to withdraw from what they typically like doing that's fun. Things are not fun anymore. It could be a child who's sleeping excessively, who typically doesn't, like when I say excessively, I remember having a client that didn't get up until 3 p.m. on
Oh,
a regular,
Jesus.
yeah, and that was this summer, and so just sleeping until 3 perpetually, and so things like that. Also, a child who has stopped eating or is overeating. Okay, either no appetite. So anything excessive, you want to pay attention to things. Bedwetting, pay attention to that. Any type of enuresis, wetting either in the daytime or nighttime. Um, Even kids, I've seen kids actually have not diarrhea, but also constipation because of the anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so you have to be really careful with that one, because kids can develop ankle creases, which that would be the block in the tummy. And so you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the signs. And as a parent, the best way to do that, I write everything down and have little notations on stickies and all kinds of stuff, and in my phone. If you see a pattern of behavior that's continual and that's different from what they've been displaying, you want to take note of that and talk to their pediatrician about it. That's going to be really important, because a lot of times we tend to brush things under the rug and say, oh, well, it's just this or it's just that. But you're not the doctor. So you want to get professional opinion. Don't wait, because early intervention research has shown early intervention is the most effective, even as it relates to kids who don't have a diagnosable disorder. However, it could be situational, just like with COVID. We have a lot of people that are experiencing situational depression, situational anxiety. And so when we start to look at that, guess what? It can be just as debilitating, because we don't know, like Dr. Lazare said here, we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know if or when there will be the appropriate a treatment plan set up, or vaccine or whatever they're planning. We don't know when kids will go back to school. A lot of kids are missing their friends. So they're really, really, really having a hard time. They're missing that which identifies them. A lot of kids identify themselves with their school, with their classroom, with their classmates, and they don't have that right now. So that's really difficult. So again, parents, pay attention to all the signs. Look at everything, because everything is data.
Wow, you said a lot. When you mention, and I'm just taking this in like a sponge because I see some of all of this. You mentioned social withdrawal. This is where I want to transition a little bit to teens, because I know earlier we talked mostly about school age kids. Teenagers can be very moody. Okay. They can be downright moody, sleep till 2. How do you know they've crossed that line and this is not normal behavior? When should a parent be more concerned that this is not just my kid acting out, or this just isn't my teenager being a teenager, that this is something deeper than just normal teenage behavior?
Mm-hmm. And yes, teenagers are very, very, they tend to have a different way they manage their emotions, and that their emotions tend to be, obviously they're developing at that point. They've bypassed that more primary stage, and so they're developing emotionally. They have more interactions with people at a more advanced level, so of course they're more emotional. But one of the things I say is, your child has a pattern. When you start seeing deviations in that pattern, or even extensive beyond what the typical is, like the one kid that was sleeping until 3. His mom said he usually did sleep late, but this was different. He was usually up by 12, which is still late, but he was still sleeping at 3. And so she saw that difference. I had another parent say that the teenager was exceedingly erratic, couldn't really get a handle on behavior, a lot of confusion. So start looking for it. And I'll say this before I say start looking, you have to have the interactions in order to identify what is going on. You have to have the data. Because I see the television shows where the child goes in the room and shuts the door. I wasn't allowed to do that as a teenager. I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't grow up like that. There was no going in the room, shutting the door. Never ever happened in all of my life, and still would not do it today. Do you hear me though? And so we have to be willing to get into our child's world, but do it in a way where they still feel respected and still feel a sense of dignity. That's where I talked about carving at that time for mom. You have to carve at that time for kid too. You have to carve out that time. And I talked about a little bit with the little ones going outside, doing the grounding. With your teenagers, it's going to be important to engage them on their level. What do they enjoy talking about? Don't insert your world into theirs. You get into theirs. Pull off your shoes, metaphorically, and get into their world. And let's talk. It doesn't have to be long. It may be a 5-minute conversation, but let me tell you, I can get a lot out of 5 minutes. If you give me 5, I'm going to take 10, because I'm going to get out everything I can. And so we got to be willing to, if they're talking about the stuff that teens talk about, man, they talk about a lot of stuff. If they're talking about people being emo or talking about Lizzo or whatever they're talking about, get in their world, engage them there non-judgmentally. And I promise you, you'll see more. You'll see more. Another thing too, as you said before, teens tend to be really, really moody. But if you notice, you start to hear them saying perpetually, I can't take this, I'm tired of being here, things like that. You really, really at that point want to seek additional support. You be support, but you also may want to seek additional support because you just never know. There's so much going on. We don't want to disregard anything that could be an indicator that your child or teenager is suicidal. You know, there's so much out there. And as I said before, every child deals with the world according to the scope of life they've had the chance to experience. Well, nobody's experienced COVID-19 before.
True.
It's unprecedented. No one's experienced, truly. And the truth is, we may think that we understand, but we don't. And so when kids say you don't understand, no, because at 14, 15, 16, 17, I wasn't going through this, right? And the prefrontal cortex, which is where you do all of your reasoning at, that has not yet fully developed in teens.
Right.
And so they don't have that reasoning capacity to be able to ration out that, okay, this is happening and they're working on a vaccine, but right now in the here and now, I have the comfort of my family and I am safe. And I believe that I will continue to be safe. And these are the things that I will do to help keep my mind safe. Okay.
Wow. Awesome. All right. The last thing I want to talk about as it pertains to teens. Then I have some questions from the audience for you. I knew they would. So one of the other things I want to talk about with teens that I just felt so connected to, I don't know if I was sad for them or what, but all of the disruptions in their milestones, graduation, prom, things like that. I knew how important it was for me, for my children, and these kids have missed a lot. And I know we tried to give them alternatives, which I think are great, but what is this doing to them holistically, and paying attention that if they are upset about not graduating in a traditional way, because that's the way mom did it or dad did it, and I've been looking to do this for 12 years, or playing in the championship game because I'm a senior, this is my last year, and I didn't get to play that out. Everything was canceled. So I do want you to take a minute to talk about that disappointment is disheartening, and it's not so easy to get over, because I think sometimes adults are like, well, just get over it. We'll just do this. And they want you to be happy, but that's really heavy, I think. What do you think?
I agree with you. And I think it's unrealistic to tell somebody or to think that it makes sense for somebody to just get over it, like jumping over a broom or a bridge or something like that. There is a level of grief that goes with the loss of something. Even if it's something that is expected and not yet attained, there is still grief attached to the fact that that experience that you have been hoping for, waiting on, and looking and planning for did not culminate. So I think we have to, as parents, take a step back and get in their headspace, in the sense of, there are things that we have aspired for and that we've attained, some that we didn't, right?
Right.
Just imagine, look at how big graduation is.
Yeah.
That's not a small thing. That's one of the biggest things that you've worked for, that for all 12 years.
Right.
That's a long time. That's like working for a degree and not getting your degree. Okay. And a degree, that's only 4 years. So when you tell me 12 years, that's a different story. So we have to allow them to deal with their grief, recognize they're going to go through the same stages of grief. They will experience the anger. They will experience the sadness. They will experience the fault blaming, because at the end of the day, this was their thing and it didn't happen. This was their thing. This is what identifies you. It's a rite of passage that says that you have gone from this stage of grade school all these years to this stage of adulthood. And that was taken away from all of these kids. So we have to get in a place where we can say, I cannot fully empathize because I hadn't experienced it, but what I can do is I can sympathize.
Right.
Don't try to make it, try to dummy it down. I know that was painful. I know that I know it. I can't say how I would feel, but I can only imagine how you feel. Yeah. I can only imagine that it's extremely painful. I know you've worked so super hard to get there and have your prom and have your graduation, and it didn't happen, and then you can start planting the seed of hope. But you know what? We're going to work really hard, and I want us to find some things that you're aspiring to do now, and I'll help you to work towards those. And I'm so sorry that didn't happen for you. And I'm here for you through that. Okay. We have to be able to love people through the brokenness of what's going on in the current time and not compare it to what we've been through, because we haven't been through that. We didn't go through a pandemic during the time of none of us have gone through that. So we have to be careful that we don't try to kind of put ourselves in the seat of, I've been there, done that, because it's not true. You have not been there, done that. Okay. You may have had some experiences, but it was not this. This is historical. So let's be clear. There's a lot of emotionality around it. Allow them to go through. If they're angry, I understand that you're frustrated. Here's some things that you can do that may help. I don't know if it will, but this is what I do. I was just telling my son the other day, because he was frustrated about something. Noah's always on 10 about something. And he says, this stupid COVID, I hate this COVID. Yeah. And then so because there are things that he wants to do, right? He wants to be able to play with his cousins, he wants to be able to go places and do things. And quite frankly, we can't. And so just like a teenager, they're always going. So that's a complete disruption to their world.
Sure.
A lot of teens have lost their identity in COVID, because their identity was related to their athletic position. Right. Mm-hmm. I remember being a cheerleader. I loved cheerleading. It was my life. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do, and I couldn't imagine that being taken. I can't even conceptualize that. So we have to allow them to go through the grief, be there and partner with them. Don't try to rule them through it and tell them what to do and what to think, because that's just counterproductive. But be with them through it. Even like for my son, talking about the COVID and how he felt the disruption. One of the things is, I know, Noah, I get it. Mommy, I'm really sorry. Mommy's so sorry. That's not something that we have control over. And, as for me and my house, we serve the Lord. So we pray about it. And then I give him some things to do. I sent him some things to listen to. And then I said, what I want you to do is find something that you want to do, that it may not take the place of it, but it may help you feel a little bit better. And of course, he sent me some pictures of stuff he wants to order. So
you set that up though.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I hope we're helping these parents and caretakers. This is some great stuff today. I love that you made the point that it is loss. Because I know we don't always see it like that. We see loss mostly in death and stuff, but it's loss. And I think some of the kids are going through a grieving process. And I love that you brought that out. So, okay, I'm going to give you a couple of these questions and we're going to get through the rest of this. We're almost done though. This is so good. This is so good. I don't want this to be over so quick. Okay, so I have a question that says, what are some things we can do as teachers to help our children when they return in August? So I guess we'll narrow that down to maybe like 2 things.
Yeah, very good. Writing is so powerful and it's so cathartic for kids, writing and drawing. And one of the things, we did a lot of art here, even with my kids, we did a whole lot of painting. I have more paintings now than ever before. And so when we talk about kids transitioning back to school, understand that this is, and when I say transition, I mean in the real word of transitioning from the physicality of school being at home now to school being back in a building. And is it truly safe? And all of these concerns. So I think it's going to be important for teachers to allow kids a platform to convey how they feel, convey what's here. So I have this thing I love to have kids do. I get it's just like it's not a picture, but it's like a paper doll, the drawing of a body, and it has a head on there. but there's nothing else in it, right? It's just the head with the arms and the legs. And it's kind of this outline. And I have them to draw what's going on up here. Draw how you feel it. And they make the most amazing art. They do. And they put a whole lot of stuff. It's very telling to me, and it's so important for them because it allows them to tell their story. That's part one. You have them draw it. But then the cool part is have them get in little groups and have them share, have them share, because drawing your story and telling your story, it empowers you. These kids feel such a level of empowerment because it lets them know that they're separate from what's in there. This doesn't define me. This is just what I experienced. And guess what? This person beside me, they experienced that too. And this person did too. So guess what? I'm not alone. So I think that can be extremely helpful and extremely empowering to help kids feel a sense of emotional wellness and support. That's going to be the first priority as kids venture back into the school setting, not so much the academic piece readily, because we have to deal with the emotions and the mind first before we start getting to teaching and training and that kind of stuff.
All right, awesome. All right, question number 2. What is the earliest age a child can be diagnosed with mental disorders?
It depends on which one. We like to say we don't like to diagnose before the age of 5. Of course, autism is diagnosed a lot younger. If a child is not speaking at 2 years old, we go ahead and start giving either the full diagnosis, or depending on where you are, what state and what the guidelines are, they may do a non-categorical with suspicion of autism type of setup there. But traditionally, in schools, because when we say diagnose, there are 2 different components to that. Of course, you have a clinical diagnosis, which you can go to a psychiatrist or psychologist outside of the school to get. But then we also have, I don't like to call them diagnoses. Some states do. Okay. We call them the 13 categories for special education, which there's some that are specific to mental health disorders. And so that's how schools are able to provide supports for kids in schools. That's how in the community you're able to get clinical support from a psychologist or psychiatrist. So it depends on what disability or disorder, but a hard and fast rule is 5 years old.
All right. So we just had another one come in. I'm going to do this and then we're going to finish this up, and I'm sure some more are going to come in. Said, my son has been diagnosed with separation and social anxiety. How do I prepare him for eventually returning to school?
Great question. I've worked with a lot of kids with that particular thing going on. And so one of the things you may want to do, which has been very helpful for some of the parents I've worked with, you start to allow them, when you're driving, say you've already started having conversations about them going back to school, you're showing them pictures of the school, maybe going to the internet and showing them the website and the pictures, but then you actually start opportunities where you can drive to the school or on the street and let them see the school. You may want him to or her to have something that is calming, that they gravitate to. Maybe there's a stuffed animal, maybe there's something. And so and as you're driving to the school, you can have your calming music playing, and you can tell them to do deep breaths, because particularly if you recognize a child is getting escalated, you'll go ahead and have them do some deep breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, that type of thing. And what you're doing is you're shaping him or her and conditioning him or her to be able to have a comfortability with the school environment. So you're driving by, maybe you're doing this once a day, then maybe you do it twice a day. Then maybe one day you actually get out of the car and walk, maybe get out and try to approach the school building, just whatever. Don't force it, whatever the child is amenable to. Okay. And so you want to kind of gradually build that process up. Again, continuing to give him or her a lot of support, letting them know it's going to be okay. They have their little support thingy there, and you're continually giving them the deep breathing opportunities, and you want to reward every step of the way. Oh, you did such an awesome job. Yay, I'm so super proud of you, that kind of thing. Because what you're also doing is you're building up not only the comfortability, but allowing him to or her to feel that reward that you're giving for that behavior. So it doesn't so much become about the school. It then becomes kind of a reward process that they'll start to look forward to.
All right. Great conversation. So as we are coming to a close, we have a few minutes before we have to end. This has been so dynamic. There are some things I read that parents shouldn't do, that they recommend that they not do. Not that we're telling parents what to do or caregivers what to do, but we definitely want to apply what works best, and we can keep the child healthy and do what's best for the child. So there are a couple of things that I read, and I just want to mention it to you. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. One of the first things they said is to don't try to allow kids to avoid whatever it is that they're afraid of, because sometimes parents, if they don't want to go to school, if they don't want to do this because I'm afraid of it. So that's the first thing, said don't create an avenue of avoidance for them. The second thing is don't when you phrase questions with them, let them be open-ended instead of you saying it that you're leading them in the questions. And if the live doesn't understand what I mean by that, I mean, like if you ask them, are you worried about a math test, instead of how do you feel about the math test?
Right.
So
yes.
Those are the two things. And so I wanted to get your feedback on those two things.
Great. Yes. So on the avoidance, I am a huge proponent of parents not doing that. When you start trying to teach the child that they can escape from the things that are negative or that are uncomfortable, you're setting them up for a false sense of reality. Give you an example. My son, he has a podcast. He talked about this. He was afraid of, I don't know what it was, a bee or something. And I said, no. First of all, there are tons of bees all throughout the backyard and everywhere. So as long as it's not near you, I want you to go back out there. You're going to be fine. Focus on what you're doing. If it does get close to you, don't start running. I gave him what to do and he was fine. I empowered him, opposed to giving him an escape method that would not likely be effective the next time, if that makes sense. Okay. And so I'm totally an advocate of not doing that. And parents will sometimes think that that's okay because the kid is crying. And, sometimes crying is not such a bad thing. That opens up the opportunity for us to have some dialogue. So the next one is the questioning. If the question will render up a yes or no, it's not the best question because you're not going to get enough information. Okay. Anytime you're talking to your child, you want it to be dialogue. Dialogue is back and forth conversation between two people where we're getting information and we're giving information. If it's just yes or no, you've gotten very little. Okay. So you want to give them the chance to tell their story, give them the chance to convey their thoughts and their heart to you, because that's the only way you're really going to be able to get in and help them. I love talking to my boys, even my son that's on the autism spectrum. He may not tell me a whole lot. He does have verbal language, but it's kind of limited. We're not at conversational speech yet, but I allow him a lot of opportunities to tell me what he's feeling. And I look at all of the behavioral aspects to help me to put the puzzle together. Does that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely. That makes sense.
I have something for your audience. And I will leave it with you and you can post it, but I can send a packet of handouts. I actually have an Edmodo site that has handouts for parents in there. So I will send that to you and they can just go to the link. It's open-ended and each section has different handouts according to the behavior or the disorder or whatever it is. And they can just go in and take a look and, lots of things that'll be helpful for them.
All right. Did you guys hear that? Resources. That's what we're talking about. We are here to empower and help each other. So I am super excited. So the last component that Dr. Anitra is going to address is I'm going to ask, as a professional, what advice would you give parents and caregivers for assisting their children that may be struggling? And so just whatever you think will help the situation, help the parent, help the kid. I think you did mention one, you talked about that deep breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. It works for adults too. I do it. So just a couple things that you want to give parents. I did get one of the questions a teacher asked, what could I do basically to maintain, I guess, my peace and I can keep my mind in front of my students. And that's probably some of the same things you suggest with the kids. Mm-hmm. So I'll let you speak to that and we'll talk about how to contact you and we'll be done.
Thank you. So, when we talk about what we can do, I like to tell people we have to find our niche of peace, right? For me, I really like being able to go take a walk, doing the hot bath. That helps me to get centered. I also like to do meditation, prayer, listening to my worship music. When it comes, and so I want to kind of extend that to the teacher, but also just even having in the morning when you go to your class, going in a little bit earlier and just taking you a moment to breathe, doing your deep breathing and centering in your mind the affirmations of it's going to be an amazing day. I'm going to impact every single kid today. I'm going to operate in excellence and it is going to be amazing for me and for my students. Being able to speak those affirmations. And for your kids, do the same thing. I promise you, even though my kids are in Mississippi, I send them affirmations every single morning. I type them over every single morning. And so just being able to kind of help to plant in their mind a positive headspace for what to expect. And it should be positive and good and glowing and positive about them, building their self-image, building their inner man and their outer man. And we do that through positive affirmations. And it doesn't have to be a whole bunch of them. It could be, I am smart, I am powerful, I am successful, I'm someone important, and I am loved. Right? Very simple. You can put those on sticky notes and put them up in the bathroom, on the mirror, on the refrigerator, so that when they walk by and they see it, boom, they start saying it. Okay. Something else that I found to be really helpful. Again, I talked about doing writing, journaling, both for parents and teachers is awesome. You may want to go in for that teacher and take you 15 minutes in the morning just to journal about what you feel and then what you want to feel. You always have the positive that counters the negative. I'm frustrated. Then you have your positive. I am going to feel peace. I feel peace. And so just kind of doing the writing for kids, doing either the writing journal or even I've had kids do a drawing journal where they're drawing things and they feel good about that. And one of the things about that too, when you go back and you look at those journals, even for me, I've journaled a lot in my lifetime and I go back and I look at it over the years and I'm like, wow, I remember that. That was 15 years ago and I was going through this and look now. Thank you, Jesus, And so just recognizing that you have a journey and sure. You can write your journey and you can see the progression and it is empowering. Also, I love that. You talked about me praising and dancing. Dancing is so, I'm telling you, there's research on that, just exercise in general. So even I've seen in classrooms, and I love going into my elementary school classrooms because they do a lot of dancing and it sets the mood, it gets the body flowing, right? And it gets kids, it gives them their happy, right? In the morning times for my kids, when we would drive into school, I would play Happy by Pharrell and we would be dancing and we'd play God's Got It by Jay Moss and we'd be dancing in the car. We pull up to school, everybody's looking like, and we're gone in the car, but helping to set the atmosphere for what you want to feel, create a positive milieu for yourself and for your kids. That's going to be super important.
Wow. All right, we've come to an end. Listen, guys, I know you want to know how to contact this awesome woman. Her contact information it's pinned in the comment section. Dr. Anitra, and I left out Shelton. Anitra Shelton Quinn. And so the phenomenal woman, how to reach her website or email address, her phone number. She is an author. So she has the book. You want to talk a little bit about your book right quick?
Yes. I have to give that testimony. I wrote, God did so much during this COVID-19. Everybody is really having a hard time dealing and managing with it. And so he put this book in my spirit, Peace in the Storm. And Peace in the Storm is a collection of devotions and meditations that God inspired me to write, that actually for each chapter, there is a prayer. There is a meditation activity, those activities that we're talking about that parents can do, a meditation activity in each chapter, a prayer in each chapter, and there's a meditational scripture. Now, the amazing thing about this book is I wrote this book in probably about 30 days. I was pushing. It's not very long. It's a short read. And it is a 10-time Amazon bestseller already. That literally, it became a 2-time Amazon bestseller in less than 24 hours. By the time, in less than 72 hours, it was a 10-time Amazon bestseller. So wow. It is awesome. 5-star review book, and it will bless your life. You can grab it on Amazon.com. It is an ebook.
All right. Peace in the storm.
Peace in the storm.
Peace in the storm. All right, Dr. Anitra Shelton Quinn. All right, guys, this is it for tonight. I'm so honored and proud to have you join me today. I am just bubbling over. I love the conversation. I know they got some great information. Remember, she talked about the resources. So, guys, if you want those resources, please DM us, or you can email her and she'll get it to you. Either way, we'll get you what you need. So I am grateful for the opportunity. Guys, I know you enjoyed her. Come on, give her some thumbs up, give her some hearts. She gave some awesome information. Share with your parents. You can share with your family members. We're all in this together because, hey, it takes all of us to raise our children, right? So I am grateful for the information that she shared with us today. Dr. Quinn, I honor you, woman of God. I so appreciate you. I look forward to the next time we get together. So we appreciate you. With this, we say good night, guys. We love you all. Thank you for everything. Until we meet again on the other side. Peace out, y'all. Love you.
Love you. Thank you for having me.